Hi Year 4, how are you? I hope you're all staying safe and well at home and that you're getting on okay with all of your home learning tasks. So last week you guys were looking at perimeter and finding the perimeter of rectangles and of those composite rectilinear shapes. I was really pleased. I saw lots of photos sent in of work that you guys have been doing and it looks like you all got on okay with it, so well done. Don't forget, if you find anything tricky or you have any questions as you're doing your work, you can get your parents to email me or Miss Carter and we'll get back to you as quickly as can and give you the help that you need. Okay, so this week we are going to be looking at the area of rectilinear shapes. So area is the measurement of the surface that's covered by a shape. So last week we were looking at perimeter. So that's when we were looking at the distance all the way around the shape by adding up the edges. Now, when we're looking at area, we're thinking about how much does that shape cover? What is the surface of that shape? We're measuring that area. Now, it's important that we know how to measure area because we can use it in the real world. Let's say, for example, this was a wall that you had at home and you were doing some decorating and you wanted to know how much wallpaper to buy. You need to know the area of your wall to know how much wallpaper you need to cover it. Another example would be a football pitch. Imagine you had a new football pitch and you were buying some grass to cover it. You need to know the area of your football pitch, the surface, how much is covered, so you know how much grass to buy. So this week you've got some tasks finding the area of rectilinear shapes. We're going to be looking at different methods that we can use to find the area. And we're also going to draw upon some of our multiplication skills as well. Okay, so good luck and do let us know if you need any help. Looking forward to seeing how you get on. Okay, so like I said, we are going to be measuring area. And area is the measurement of the size covered by a surface. So what we're going to do first of all is I'm going to show you a grid which has got some different measurements on, and I want you to think, are they measuring a length, a perimeter, or an area? So pause the video here. I want you to have a look and see whether they are a length, a perimeter, or an area. Okay, so let's look at them one by one. So how far I have to walk to school. That's got a starting point, A, and an end point, B. So that's just one length. So that is measuring a length. How much turf is needed on a football pitch? Now that turf needs to cover the whole surface of the football pitch. So I'm going to need to know the area. The size of a swimming pool cover. Now again, that cover will need to cover the whole surface of the swimming pool. So I will need to know the area of the swimming pool. How much carpet is needed for a room? Now, my carpet goes all across my floor. It covers the whole of the floor. So I'm going to need to know the area of the room in order to cover the surface of the floor. How much fencing is needed to go around a playground? Now, that word around is the clue there. I'm looking for the fencing going all the way around the outside of the playground. So that will be a perimeter. How long a pencil is? That's one length. How much paint is needed to cover a wall? So I'm looking at covering the whole surface of the wall there. So I know that's going to be thinking about area. And how long a roof gutter that goes all the way around a house is? Again, I've got that word around. So I know that's going to be a perimeter. So back to thinking about area. I've got a rectangle here on a grid. And I'm going to show you how I can use the squares on my grid to measure the area of this rectangle. So I can see that I could count the squares to say that the rectangle covers a certain amount of squares. So I'm going to go along and I'm going to count them. I'm going to tick them off as I go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this rectangle has an area of 12 squares. Okay, have a look at this rectangle. Can you tell me the area of this rectangle, how many squares it covers? Okay, now, like I said in the introduction, we are also going to use our multiplication facts to find the areas of rectilinear shapes. So I've got an array on the screen here. I want you just to pause the video and remind yourself what is an array, and I want you to tell me what multiplication facts you can find in this array. So I can see in this array that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 circles going along and 1, 2, 3 circles going down. So I know that it's showing me 6 times 3. I know that multiplication facts are commutative. That means we can switch the numbers around. This array is also showing me 3 times 6. Have a think now. Can you use one of those multiplication facts to tell me very quickly how many circles there are altogether in my array? So I know that 6 times 3 and 3 times 6 is 18. So I've managed to give a total of all of those circles without having to count them one by one, simply by counting how many there were going along and how many there were going down. That gave me a multiplication fact that I could use to find that total nice and quickly. So let's think about how we can use arrays to create rectangles and how that's going to help us find our area. So I've got 2 questions on the board that I want us to think about. How can we represent a 3 by 2 rectangle by making an array? Then we're going to think, how many circles are there and what would the area of the rectangle be? So I am going to make an array on my grid using these circles. So I know it's going to be 3 by 2. So I'm going to drag 3 going along, and I need 2 rows of that. Okay, so it asks me to make that a rectangle, and you can see that it has given us a bit of a rectangle shape, 3 along and 2 down. So now it's asking how many circles there are and what the area of the rectangle would be. Now I know that this array has given me 3 by 2, and I know that that is 6. Therefore, the area of this rectangle would be 6 squares. Okay. So I want you to have a think now, and you could draw one of these on a piece of paper if you've got one, about how we could represent a 4 by 5 rectangle by drawing an array, and then I want you to work out the area. So pause your video, get yourself some paper, draw yourself an array that represents a 4 by 5 rectangle, and then I want you to tell me what the area is. So I need to make an array to represent this rectangle. So I know I'm going to have 4 going along, and there's going to be 5 rows. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about what multiplication fact I've got from my array, which is going to help me quickly work out the area of this rectangle on my last row now. So I've got 4 times 5, or 5 times 4, we know they're the same. And I know that 4 times 5 equals 20. Therefore, the area of this rectangle is 20 squares. So I've got 2 more multiplication facts here, and I would like you on a piece of paper to draw an array which will represent one of those facts, and I want you to use the sentences above. I have rows of my total is Draw yourself an array. You can make a little rectangle around it as well if you want to remind yourself that it's helping us find the area of a rectangle. See if you can find the area of those rectangles in squares. Okay, so save time. I'm not going to draw all the arrays for you, but let's think about this fact first of all. We've got 4 times 5. So we could have drawn 4 rows of 5 or 5 rows of 4. And And we should have worked out that that gives us 20 squares. Our next one was 8 by 3, so we could have had 8 rows of 3 or 3 rows of 8, and that would have given us 24 squares. So we know we can use an array to quickly count the squares covered by the rectangle. This will give me the area of the rectangle. So here I've got an array, which is 2 times 3, or 3 times 2, and I've got a rectangle underneath it, which is covering the same amount. I can see by counting the squares along, there's 3 squares along, and there's 2 squares down. And I know that 3 times 2 gives me 6, so this rectangle has an area of 6 squares. Pause the video and see if you can use what you know about arrays by counting the rows and counting the columns to quickly count how many squares are covered by this rectangle. So I can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 squares going along, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares going down, which means I need to work out 4 times 7, and this gives me 28. So this rectangle has an area of 28 squares.